Hello everyone, welcome back to Cali So Calls YouTube channel. Today I wanna touch up briefly on a subject that kinda interjects on the last video. How come could a therapist need a therapist? There's really multiple reasons why a therapist would need a therapist. It doesn't matter on which branch of the mental health care you are in, there is still a chance and a possibility and the likelihood that at some point you will require therapy as well. One of the reasons I want to talk about is exposure. Sometimes when you are exposed to something quite frequently and quite often, it might become a little bit of a burden to carry. For example, my personal experience, I used to be a call center rep for the longest part of my professional career. But the exposure to people, dealing with 50, 60 people per day, and each one of those persons had a situation going on or a need, or sometimes they had their own issues at home and would project that onto you as a teleworker. And you had to learn how to not only calm the person down and just sort of steer the conversation, but you also had to work with yourself. And let me tell you something, it is not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of mind and a lot of emotional detachment while seeming like you are not emotionally detached, but it gets to you. You know, call center reps are no mental health specialists. They don't have the knowledge or the tools to properly navigate all the calls they have to take, all the people they have to deal with. They honestly do not have that. And you know what? Now that I'm mentioning that, call center jobs should do a course or two on how to properly take care of your mental health while working at a call center. It is very unfair and irresponsible to their employees to put them out there in the line of fire, to get crisscross all the time with the callers and just be like, yeah, just slap the apron on and go back to work. You know, I think employers need to start to be a little bit more accountable and a little bit more considerate and mindful of the workforce that they have. Going back to the exposure, if you're constantly exposed to a lot of drama and trauma and turbulent things while also navigating life as a normal person, having your own set of issues, your own set of concerns and tribulations to go through, it can very quickly amount to something that you can't deal with, which is why, for example, some psychologists are taught techniques to sort of deal with the day to day as a psychologist, how to show up for your patients and listen to them and actually care about them and actually put in the heart behind the job that you do and help them while simultaneously keeping that very important distance and removing yourself from the emotional charge that comes up possibly with those therapy sessions. However, in my case, all my knowledge of trauma and mental health and all the hardships, it really comes from personal experience. Yes, I have read a lot of books, a lot of information, exposed myself to certain studies here and there. So it is not like I am just blindly on experience. I have read up a lot on the subject. However, that does not make me a psychologist. That does not make me a psychiatrist. It just makes me somebody that has some type of knowledge, some type of formation on the subject, and has more know how and more tools than the average person. Honestly, that's the blunt truth of it. I am not discounting my experience. My experience, I think, is what allows me to help people. It's because it is one thing to know by text, like you read the text, you took the exam, and intellectually you know it. It is one thing to intellectually know something, and it is a whole different thing to have that integrated or ingrained in your own skin because you lived it. Certainly do not want to take credit away from my life experiences because all this self-healing journey that I took since very early on, as I mentioned before, I was a child when I was already reading up on the mind and psychologists and mental health and all that stuff. I was a freaking child, I kid you not. I remember feeling like I didn't want that to be my life. I didn't want these things to define me for the rest of my days. But at that age, I knew I had this joy and spirit and this sparkle and this vibrance within me that I knew was being threatened by these things to be turned off and shut down. And although I was a kid, I remember telling myself, I don't want this light to go out in me. And that's what drove me to be self-taught and read up on newspapers and books and all that stuff. By the time I was a teenager, I was already decently versed in depression, in how to read people, how to read the room, how to read people's emotions. I was already working on how to better communicate with people to avoid conflict. And I'm telling you that this was by the time I was 12. I was already in that mindset and in place. So, anyways, I derailed myself from the original conversation too long. So, I am going to make another video with that because I don't want to make lengthy videos. But you can see I have a napkin in my hand, so that's equal to tears. So, check out the other video, it's got very important information in it. Cut! Another reason why a therapist would need a therapist is because they may have their own set of trauma, their own past wounds and trauma to deal with that they may have somewhat work with, because when you expose yourself to learn about the mind and mental health and all these things, you obviously learn tools that you can apply in your life and that will help you. So it's not like these people haven't worked with themselves, but trauma is such a fickle thing. You know, I spoke about the onion, which shout out to Nicole LaPerla, because she's the one that taught me about the onion on the Self Healer Circle. I thought it was brilliant, the onion simile, because an onion does have a center, does have a whole bunch of layers, and even in the center, it still has layers if you take a good look at it. Anyways, I love the idea of the onion because trauma in our minds are most certainly a lot like a freaking onion. You may have, a few layers of that peel that you have to remove, but then you also have the actual onion rings. So it feels like that. It feels like, let me collect my thoughts. So the reason why I'm laughing is because I thought of my own self. Like when I was younger, when I first discovered all these things about psychology and all that stuff, I was like, ooh, I'm mastering this stuff. And I was only working with the peel. I wasn't even on the onion rings, y'all. And I was like, I'm done with this. This is not going to touch me ever again. Oh my Lord, was I wrong? And much like me, a lot of people would think that when they start going to therapy, when they start reading self-help books, when they start doing all these things, which don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to keep you from it. I am merely saying when we start doing all this stuff, we start feeling all empowered and like, oh, we're done with this. We work with this. I'm over it. The past is the past. Uh-huh. The mind does not give a rat's ass about how badly you want to leave something in the past. The mind leaves something in the past whenever the heck is ready to let go. Put a pin on that. I'm letting you know already. Put a pin on it. So that being said, all this psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, social workers, holistic therapists, and all this stuff, we may all have worked with the peel of the onion, the outer layers of the onion, but we likely have more layers of the onion to remove. I have come to believe we are never fully healed. Even if we are healed, whatever we went through, it's still going to be something we went through. Meaning, it's still going to have an effect on who you are, on how you show up on this world, on how you view life, on how you absorb and interpret things. It's still going to form a part of you. And although you can work with those things, I'm not saying it's final. You can change the story and learn to do these things. Yes, you can. However, it's not as easy. So there's a huge likelihood that the inner layers of the onion will be there. So that being said, a therapist's own past and trauma can be triggered while working with their clients or patients in the case of psychologists and psychiatrists. And we are all humans. We are not above anyone else. We just have a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more tools than the average person out there. Some have more knowledge and more tools, like doctors do. Others, like myself, whom are merely, passionate about the subject and have made it their life's work. We may not know it all, but we are good in certain things, and that's all that really is. The next reason why a therapist would need a therapist, depending on the level of education information that they have, they may not know enough to be able to work with more complex things. They may know enough to sort of deal with the day to day and all that stuff, but depending on the level of education information that they have, they may just not have enough knowledge, experience, tools, resources in the matter to be able to deal with their own stuff or with the workload of dealing with people with hard situations. At the end of the day, we're all just human beings. We are all just sentient beings, and we are bound to have emotions come up and show up. We are bound to have things trigger us. We are bound to, at some point, have flaws and weaknesses just like anyone else. It is important to keep that in mind instead of stand yourself solid in the arrogance of, but if you are a therapist, you shouldn't be struggle with that. Well, a therapist will stop struggling with that when they stop being human. Thank you very much. In the meantime, we're all just human beings doing the best we can, living life the most aligned that we can based on our knowledge and our passions and desires and what drives us, etc. So don't ask the impossible of a mere mortal. And as far as us holistic therapists goes, it really varies on what type of techniques they've been exposed to, they've learned, they use, which tools have actually helped them, which haven't. I've exposed myself to quite a few holistic therapists out there, and not all of them have been very successful for me. Out of the gazillion of therapies that are out there, definitely one works for you. At the very least, one of them, which I'm telling you right now, it's not going to be one of them. There's going to be 5, 10, 15 that work for you. But you need to run into them first. You need to expose yourself to them first. You need to try them. Genuinely try them first. Not just say you tried them with grinding your teeth and dragging your foot into it. No, from the bottom of your heart, giving it your 1000%, try it and find out which ones work for you, which ones don't. I hope that this gives you an idea as to why would a therapist need a therapist. I hope that this humanizes therapists in your eyes more, and let's give them grace. Let's give them space to be and feel and heal. And let's not remove the trust that we place in them solely based on the fact that they are using therapy or they have gone through therapy or they will use therapy. Let's be grateful for these therapists that are practicing what they preach. They are leading by example, and more so, they are taking the time to make sure that they reset to the level that they need to be so that they can better serve you. So instead of passing judgment on them and thinking, well, this must not be a good therapist because which therapist will need therapy? Well, you just had a few examples of which type of therapist will need therapy, and only the people that care go to therapy. So that should be a huge green flag. Only the people that care go to therapy. The people that don't care, they don't even bother. So I am not saying that if your therapist hasn't gone to therapy, it makes them a bad therapist. Maybe they didn't need it. Maybe they didn't require it. And that's perfectly fine and great for them. We don't need a whole bunch of traumatized and messed up people going around. We need to celebrate the people that are healthy, and we need to try to emulate what they do the best that we can. But the point is, I really want you to take from this to not utilize whatever mental health care provider is out there, be it traditional or unconventional. I don't want you to utilize as an excuse their own personal journey, their own healing processes to second why you're not going to them. Because at the end of the day, all you really are doing is just making up excuses so that you can keep running away from the inner work that you have to do that would truly serve you, that you just are scared to do or recognize it's going to be tough. So let's put things out there for what they are. And let's also be accountable ourselves with our own healing journey and stop projecting towards the providers what truly is our own inner fear. Please forgive me if I am giving you a very mama bear tough love right now. But the whole point of me making these videos is to bring awareness and to help. And I would not be helping if I would not be calling us out in our BS, in the things that we do to negate ourselves what we need. So don't take it defensively, offensively. take it for what it is. Somebody pointing out something that may be occurring to you, you may not be aware of. It may be the true reason why you are yet to find true healing. If you like the content of this video, make sure that you like, subscribe, you follow me either on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Make sure that you hit the notifications button so that you can be informed whenever a new video releases. There will be plenty more videos coming up. I want to try to make them short, so I will be breaking them into subjects as I see needed. So if you have any questions, suggestions, or any topics that you might want to throw my way, feel free to do so in the comments below. I'll be keeping an eye out for that. I hope y'all have a wonderful day and much love.